sometimes you realize you're on like a hamster wheel, and you realize just how much other people's, dreams or perceptions or society is like running your life. And you're like, I wonder why I don't feel fulfilled. And it's like, well, maybe because like you're not in the driver's seat. Somebody else is in the driver's seat. And that's like, not all of us want to be passenger princesses when it comes to our life.
Life's too short for bad coffee or bad leadership. I'm Lindsay Ellen, executive leadership coach, coffee enthusiast, and former ad VP turned believer in leading from a place of possibility. On Unfiltered Leadership, we skip the buzzwords and dig into the messy, human, and powerful side of leadership with real conversations and practical takeaways. Now grab your mug. Let's dive in. Welcome back. On today's episode of Unfiltered Leadership, we're exploring the gap between being professional and actually being memorable. I'm joined by Jamie Ratermann, a brand and business coach in New York City, who blends marketing psychology, identity work, and brand strategy to help founders show up as their real selves. And she's brilliant at it. Jamie and I together dig into why hiding your quirks and softening your edges keeps you stuck, how to rethink your definition of success, and what it practically looks like to build a personal brand that reflects who you are, not just what you do, which is absolutely critical. So if you are ready to stop shape-shifting for every single room you walk into and start creating a brand and a reputation that you are proud of, this conversation's for you. Grab your mug. Let's cozy up. Here's Jamie. Hey, Jamie. I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to Unfiltered Leadership.
I'm so happy to be here. I can't wait to chat.
I know it's a beautiful, beautiful afternoon here. And I want to talk about what's in our mugs, but I first want to acknowledge something. So for all the listeners, Jamie and I meant to record a week ago. And I shared this story because I wanted to give permission to people so everything was going wrong. Somehow Jamie's emails got into my spam, probably like a slip of the thumb on my phone. I forgot to put her on our recording link. So she's emailing me, asking me for the link. I'm sitting there being like, man, is she standing me up? Is this not happening? And it turns out I just wasn't getting her emails. So we get on finally, like a while later. And we were like, do we still record? I don't know. And then a part of me wanted to just push through and say, let's just record. We're here. I don't want to, disappoint Jamie or waste her time. And then I just was like, you know what? It feels like something's kind of conspiring that this is not the day. It just didn't feel right. I didn't want to rush us. I wanted to give us spaciousness to have this really wonderful conversation. So I graciously asked you to reschedule for a week later, which you did. And now we're here. So I want to thank you for your flexibility and your grace. And I also just want to give people the permission that if things don't feel right and you have the flexibility, it's okay to say no and move things around so that you feel set up for the best success for whatever you're doing.
I,
So
I love that you shared the story for the fact that I definitely feel like I cringe when I make a mistake. And sometimes I just got to go, they probably don't care as much as you think they do. And for me, I was like, it's fine. I can let's do it next week. So there was no skin off my back. But ultimately, sometimes it's not good to force things. It's not good to force things.
It's not good to force things. And I appreciate that because, of course, I definitely was in my head in the moment. And later I was like, oh, man, I feel so bad. And I did think about it a bit, but I also just let it go. And here we are. And I think this was absolutely meant to be. So I have to ask Jamie, what is in your mug today and what mug do you have to show off?
Now I am triple caffeinated, so I'm holding a mug, but it is water. I gotta be transparent. But if you caught me 2 hours before this, it would have been my third cup of bulletproof coffee, a mix of mushroom coffee and regular. I have the mix, and it's fantastic.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, you're in East Coast, so it's good, late afternoon for you.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished my matcha, or that would be in my mug today. I have some lemon ginger tea now, or else I don't know if I kept going with caffeine, what that would do for me in this state, but I will share. So the mug I have today, I picked out because I was thinking a lot around branding and personal branding. I was trying to pick out a mug to embody that, which we're going to be digging into, friends. But I couldn't really actually pick out just one. But I grabbed one that just spoke to me and was in line with brand colors, but also creativity, supporting an artist I really love. So this is a green checkered one on a speckled clay from Mary Carroll, who's out of Portland.
Nice.
And I don't know something about it. I always look and gravitate towards it. I just think it's very charming.
I love a good green, like, it feels healing in the morning, like, I feel like there's so much to color therapy, so I would definitely pull that
Yeah.
from your mugs as
Yeah.
well.
Well, if you ever come over, whenever anyone stays, I love to host and I love to make people coffee. And when anyone comes over, I always say that like, please pick out whatever mug, embodies what you want. And I love to see what people choose that they want. Some people do not give a flying F. They're like, just give me some coffee. And I'm like, but this is a ritual, people. Anyways, but I would love to see what mug you'd pick from my collection.
Oh, I would love to see it.
So, Jamie, the place I want to start with today, and the question I have for you to kind of kick us off here is when we were chatting, we were talking about this idea of like, what does professional mean anymore? And I was like, been thinking about that a lot, especially in a time when people are really uncertain in the job market and in their jobs and feel like they can't be very risky. They feel like they have to be a certain way to be secure or show up a certain way to get hired. But yet we're in like a changing time with a new generation that's probably redefining what professionalism actually is, with an older generation that has their own attachment to it. So I just thought the fact that you like brought that up was like, wow, I actually don't even know how to answer that. So can you give us your expert point of view of what does it mean to be professional these days?
Well, I feel like it's almost like an old term to go with. Like I'm thinking of my dad, my grandpa and my mother's time. It was, wear the pantsuit, wear like get a turn in ahead of deadline, go above and beyond, work the long hours. It would be about like, sacrificing yourself for the job in a lot of ways. So that as long as you reach the goal, you do the thing, you're sacrificing yourself for the job. And a lot of that had to do with like admin stuff, doing the things that's not really in your job description, just so that like you can say, look at my work ethic, look at how productive I am, look at how efficient I am. Like I'm indispensable. So this idea of being professional, I feel like I'm even describing a high achieving professionalism.
Sure.
There was so much of like sacrificing yourself. Where now when like for me, or even talking to somebody who says like, oh, I need to be professional, it usually means I need to get rid of any standout characteristics about me. So it's like I don't want to be too flashy. I don't want to be too bold. I don't want people to see me like, emotional, maybe like emotional can mean excited or like frustrated and we
Yes.
need to fix this. Or even too like I don't want to be too loud about what I think is going wrong. Like I want to just kind of toe the line, do my work and leave. And I think like for professional now, it's like that sacrifice of sacrificing self and just doing your work. It does one, it's not like in a corporate setting, it's not going to keep your job
Right.
like in any way. Most likely, if you're just doing what's like to be the most efficient, productive person, AI may be able to do your job. Like if you're not showing how like with the different characteristics you bring to the role, it's going to be that. And the same thing goes for anyone running their own business, which is a lot of my clients is going like, well, if I just I'm not too loud, I won't have any haters, or if I don't say what I really think, then like more people will like me. And it's just like all of this just has somebody going, I don't remember them.
Yes.
Professionalism can almost mean unmemorable at the end of the day.
Yeah. What I hear in that is playing it safe,
Yeah.
like almost fear driven, because if you step out of line too much in one way or the other, the risk feels so big for my safety. So I must stay within these bounds because society has told me over and over and over again that this is safe, this is okay, this is what creates success. But I also feel like that's changing.
Totally.
And like you said, that if you you try to fit within that mold, then you just don't stand out. You're not memorable anymore. What's so important about standing out right now?
I mean, it's what keeps you on people's minds, but it also has people like go to bat for you. They're going to relate to somebody who talks about what they love or what they're passionate about and what they don't like, to be honest, like to be able to be in that. So I think I'll use my own story as an example. I was the
Please.
perfect corporate worker. I've owned my own business for going on 9 years now, but when I was in the corporate, I was the perfect corporate worker. Do the extra work. If someone needed something from me, I'd be like, I got it for you in an hour. I would make sure I was ahead of the game. I'd have all the statistics, the presentations ready, and definition of professional. I clocked in at 8:30. Unfortunately, left sometimes at 8 o'clock at night. The janitor would tell me to go home. I was like, I will sacrifice myself for the job. I was absolutely that person. And I can now tell you that I learned a lot, that there's a lot of things I learned in there, but when it came time to lay people off, I got laid off just like anybody else. Like, there were the people that stayed were the people that were part of the brand DNA. And honestly, I mean, I'm not naming names for this reason. Like, I don't know if I would say they were the hardest workers, but they knew how to be memorable in the room more
Yep.
often than not.
Yeah. So what is it that you and I can identify with that. Um very much so in my own corporate story. I didn't go through luckily any layoffs, but like being able to navigate and understand and see the difference of what kind of earned you currency that gave
Mhm.
you like I don't want to say true safety because that doesn't really exist, especially now, but gave you maybe more of like people like speaking your names in rooms that you're not in
Exactly.
versus the folks that checked all the boxes but kind of got left behind. And what do you think is so beyond like so what should be the new definition instead of like being professional? What should we strive for instead? What actually counts?
I think let's go for like a easy goal, be memorable. What does it mean to be memorable? And I
Yeah.
think even in the first striving for like that big hairy goal, like be unforgettable is the next step. Like this is like making something really being able to have something that allows someone like, oh, who's that girl who like always talks about, it could be anything from culture, like, oh, that TV show, she's always like telling us about that TV, or it can be I love the way she presents. She's always really open and silly, or she always like answers the questions. Like, she's one of those people that lets nobody interrupt somebody in a room. Like, in general,
Mm,
like, there's ways
mhm.
to just be able to go like, okay, how would I like people to remember me, and how do I lean into those actions and into those, that energy on a regular basis when I'm in a business brand, any type of setting.
What that sparks for me is the sense of starting with like understanding almost your superpowers blended with like what you want to be perceived by or how you want to be remembered, exactly as you said. Because I think we often what I notice and what happened to me too is that we often don't recognize that the stuff that really sets us apart truly does set us apart. But for us, it often comes so easy that we don't think it's special.
Mm,
So I remember I had someone that I managed towards the latter half of my career who would tell me like my natural leadership in a room or my I can't remember exactly what she talked about, but she was just like, you like things come so natural for you in the way that you bringing people together and that you're driving a team forward. And it that's something that's like really hard for me and it's so natural for you. And to me, I'm like, well, that's just me doing my job, right? And not thinking it was anything very special. But the reality is that was a superpower. And as I started to recognize that, I was able to hone it and lean into it. And here I am now coaching on leadership, right? So I think there's something too of like how to have that self awareness and that acknowledgement and like kind of like be humble, but like also put that aside for a minute and say what really makes me stand out and will that I can really own that people will remember me for. It could be those qualities, it could be the energy, it could be the quirkiness, it could be a skill, it could be, there's a lot of ways that could go.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a I mean, it's important to understand that we do have biases. Wait,
Mhm.
first you were saying, be humble. For me, I think with women, stop being humble. Like, I
That's
think
such a
that
good point.
more often than not, I'm like, "You're really good at this." And they're like, "Well, I don't want people to know that I think I'm good at it." And I'm like, "That's let's just let's just let that shine. I think sometimes we're the first people to tell ourselves that we're not bright enough to shine, and I like that just that remember of like how would I cheer on another friend that like they're really good
Mhm.
at this. Even like now when you compliment a friend and they're like, "Oh," like it feels weird. Like I don't know, you see this in me, like how lovely that can feel, but doing it for yourself can be
So
the
hard.
biggest act of self-love for sure. But I think with what you're saying is that this idea of a natural bias is it's hard for us to realize sometimes we have natural strengths because it's something we're into. Like it's something we've probably dedicated a lot of our life to and we think everybody else has as well. I remember getting in a conversation with a freelance writer who she was like, "I just feel like everyone could do my job." And I'm like, "Not everyone can turn a phrase. Not everyone can write well. Not everyone can do this level of detail and relate it to somebody else." Like so like there's a sense of just because you can do it, you love doing it, there's so many people out there that you just gotta sometimes you just have to meet the person that, like, shows you that there's a beginner level, and you're like, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize that people have difficulty with this," and being able to lean into that, but what I love most about your story is that someone reflected it to you, which I think is a really great first exercise for anyone who's trying to figure out find out what your reputation is now from people you trust. So, like, somebody who
Yes.
would not have any ulterior motive if they told you like, "Oh, you're not good at this or you're great at this." Like be able to like ask a friend who like will be honest. We want honesty, but the idea of going like, "How would you perceive me? Like what would be like 5 adjectives you would say about me?" And sometimes you'll love what they say and sometimes you'll be like, "I actually don't want to be like for me, sometimes I hate when people call me a mothering character and I'm like, I don't want to be taking care of every like I wanna empower you, but I don't want you to feel like I'm taking care, like, that was, like, a part of when I was thinking about my brand myself, I'm like, "How can I" that, like, maybe
Mhm.
that comes naturally to me, but how do I shift that to something that I actually want to be seen as, or I would actually be proud to be called?
That reminds me of when I was back, I think this must have been in like 2015. I got sent to this conference, a women's leadership conference put on, I think it was by like AOL, which is really funny. But it was called Makers, the Makers
Mhm.
conference at this like beautiful resort in California. And I got to see a woman named Carla Harris speak. And
I've
she
met
was, I
her.
believe,
Oh, sorry, anyway, I'm
you know
listening.
her, you know Carla?
I've met her actually in
You've
person,
met her?
Yeah, 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 I worked for a TEDx speaker named Bonnie St. John, and they were, like, besties. They were really close, so I got to meet them, like, meet her.
Oh my god, I didn't know any of this. Okay, I'm, like, nerding out. So, Carla actually, like, changed my life with this talk. She worked or I don't think she still works at Morgan Stanley, does she? I feel like she maybe just has
I
her own
don't think
brand now.
so. I don't think so.
But she was, I believe, the first Black female partner at Morgan Stanley. Obviously a very male-dominated industry, but she came and talked, and a lot of her speaking engagements were around, like, Carla's Pearls, and talk about branding. I mean, she'd come out and sing. She's a big singer, she's, like, does gospel singing or at her church, and she would come out at her talks and just, like, start singing, like, "What a Glorious Day" or something, and, like, own the stage, but you just and then that's been, like, a big part of her brand is her singing. But one thing she said from this talk was she talked about how perception is the co-pilot of reality. And I talk about this with my clients all the time, and that you could think you're doing, all the right things based on your expectation or your perception of yourself, but the reality actually lives in the perception that other people have of you.
Mhm,
And so when we're thinking about how to be quote unquote like our own version of professional or to be memorable or embodying our brand and how we want to be perceived, we have to really be very conscious of how are other people actually perceiving me. That turns into the reality. And she was talking about it in this sense of almost like values, but we can get into values, but I like if people value toughness, she was talking about toughness, but someone said she wasn't tough enough. She's like, I think I'm very tough,
mhm.
but they don't think I'm tough. So clearly I'm not doing something right. So she started to change the way she showed up. She's, I want to be perceived as tough. That's what they value here. But also, I think I'm tough. I want to be perceived as tough because that does align to the leader I want to be, the professional I want to be. And so she began to change her posture and the way she walked, the way she talked. And she talked about becoming tougher until one day she heard interns walking behind her and being like, oh, that's Carla. She's so tough. And she was like, Nailed it. So I think there's what this all starts with though is from a place of self-awareness and like also data gathering. Like how do you want to be perceived? What is your special sauce, your superpower that you want people to remember you for? But making sure that you're not just doing that only here, like within yourself, but that you're getting the right information, data, facts, reality from those out there so that you can be in more control over that perception. We do have control
Yeah.
over how other people perceive us, but if we don't understand where the starting line is, then we don't know how to adjust ourselves. And if we're just working off of assumptions of how the world is kind of seeing us, then it could end up working not aligning to the brand we want to put out into the world.
Well, honestly, like I think part of this is knowing that you can create your world. And I think part of it starts with like I know people when we hear brand, people go straight to, you know, influencers or big business and all of the thing, but like everybody has a brand. Either like it's been given to you and you're just perpetuating it or you're creating it intentionally. And I think that's for anyone who's not trying to run their own business or in general not trying to like climb up a ladder. Brand, just replace brand with reputation. How do people perceive you? But as far as somebody who's like, I want to, create this impact in this world around me, part of that is going to be like, how do people receive me from the get-go?
Mm,
How do I build trust with somebody? Like in general, like how do I want people to feel in my presence? And you can do that through kind of what you were saying with Carla is that so she wanted people to perceive her as tough. Work your way back. Like if you know what your values are, which actually I sent you the link, it'll probably be in the show notes, is that I have that personal brand builder. And the second step is choose your values and think about how you actually do those values in your day to day so that you can make those louder. You can make those more visible because it's going to help for people to like, oh, she's kind, she's has a high work ethic that as long as you know what your values are, you can start to continue to design them. But for me, the biggest thing is that I feel like professionalism is something that was given to us. This is like a reaction to like if we want a job, we need to be professional. If we want to be seen as somebody, smart, we need to get straight A's. So it's like
mm.
a reactionary, like, okay, professional is like our baseline versus how do I want people to know me? Let's create that instead of letting someone to like give it to us. Choose like who we are. Let us decide who we are. That kind of idea.
Yeah, what I love about your approach is that there's so much agency in that and empowering, right? You want your brand is to empower others, and what you're saying is extremely empowering. And it makes me think about the opportunity of like, we get to define what success is. Other people don't have to define what success is, and
Mhm.
at least for ourselves. And I think that's like a lot of the agency that we give up is one side is like, what does it mean to be professional? But also like, what does it mean to be successful for me? And so I think we get a lot of that from society or the company we're at. And the reality is you actually can define what you believe your success is. And that can also be in your reputation and
Uh,
like the markers of that success. And the markers of that success don't have to be the ones that everyone quote unquote values the most. How you climb the ladder, the amount of money you get. Maybe those are, but that doesn't have to be the only markers
I
of that
I
success.
totally agree. Sometimes you realize you're on like a hamster wheel. Like somebody
Mhm.
says like you need to make 300K a year, and then there's this one person asks like, why do you need to make 300K a year? And like they're like, because that's what people said you need to do. And you realize just how much other people's, dreams or perceptions or society is like running your life. And you're like, I wonder why I don't feel fulfilled. And it's like, well, maybe because like you're not in the driver's seat. Somebody else is in the driver's seat. And that's like, not all of us want to be passenger princesses when it comes to our life. Like we want to be able to feel like we know what our next stop is, what's going to happen. And like we do get to create this. It's just, I don't know. I think one of the things in general, as somebody who helps people with their branding, is that this subject sounds so like fun and kind of like, oh yeah, what are my values? But it's deeply personal. Sometimes people have never looked inward, and at least to this degree where they go, who do I want to be or how do I want to be perceived? Because it's a lot easier for someone to say, you're the hard worker or you're the mothering character. And you're like, well, I mean, I don't hate it. Fine. I'll do that. But at the end of the day, like you're letting someone else define you and we want to define ourselves. It's a human characteristic. We want to define who we are.
Yes. That brings me to a conversation I had recently. This idea that if other people are defining us, we have to be mindful in the corporate world because like being known for something can be really good for us. Like we have
Mhm.
to stay this is like to build on that, like stay current in like what we want our reputation to be, what we want our brand to be, how we want to be perceived, because sometimes that can get us really put into boxes in the corporate world. And like, oh, that can end up harming our growth and our agency because it can be like, oh, well, Lindsay's the really reliable like problem solver. She's the problem solver, you know? And maybe I wanted to be known as the problem solver because I was great at it. It was adding a lot of value. I was noticing the currency was building, like earning for me until the time comes when you need to now be strategic. And then there are rooms you're not in, and they're like, oh, well, she's incredible at execution and solving problems, but she's not really, I don't really see a lot of strategy from her.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the balance comes of like, don't, oh, yes, do not like give your agency away of how you're being defined. You just need to define yourself,
Hmm.
but also be, be on top of it and like just like your values evolve as you do, you need to make sure and I love your take on this, like your brand needs to evolve with you too because because your success is going to continue to move. How you want to be perceived is going to continue to move. And in the corporate world, you have to balance that with your own desires, but also then what the company values and like what is going on around you so that you're kind of managing yourself within a system.
Totally. Totally. It's so interesting, like, just using the example, my corporate life, I always, like, kind of it's like a past life or something whenever I talk about it,
Back
but
then.
I was called adaptive, and I was like, "Yeah, I adapt. I adapt. Whatever you need me to do, I can handle. I'm good under pressure, all of the things." I know back then I was like, "Yeah, call me adaptive. I'll take it." But at the time, it was like, "Yeah, she'll do whatever you ask her to do," and there
Yes.
was, like, never this idea of, like, "Wait, maybe I want to be known for the things that are gonna get me to where I wanna go." I just thought, like, "This sounds like a good word," or, "This is a good characteristic, so I'll stick with it." And, again, like, admittedly, like, looking back, hindsight 2020, I had to beg for, like, people to be added to my team. I was the head of social media that was my last job in corporate, so I needed team members, and they're like, "Well, you can do all of it." Like, there was a lot of that discussion of, like, "But you've been doing it okay without it, so why do it?" So it was this idea of, like, okay, like, I definitely showed that I would keep taking more workload. I wouldn't set the boundary. I wouldn't say what was necessary. Like, I would there was a lot of, learning in that aspect of going like, "Okay." To be honest with you, like, I started to, become enlightened of sorts in the last, like, couple months before I had left and did some really cool projects. But it was like I had to get rid of that adapt, like, characteristic of myself, and it's not that I don't adapt now, I think I can handle a lot of things, but I also know that, like, that's not the main value I want you to know about me. Like, I would rather that I'm, like, very thoughtful. I prefer depth. Like, I'm like, that's we're really here to, like, grow and be bold about it. Like, those are the things. But yeah, adaptions in there. It's just not they're in the back seat. They're in the trunk. Like, I don't need you to know that's, like, my main thing.
Yeah, or at least the way that they were defining that
Yeah.
as like, can do all the things versus, oh, you put Jamie somewhere, she's gonna be able to figure it out. She's gonna be able to get in there. And but yeah, that is like such a true reality for so many people is that we get once again kind of given this title of being known for something great. And if we are not in control of it and we kind of are like giving away that power and agency of like, oh, let me just own this because it seems to be everyone seems to like it, and we can end up finding ourselves in a corner that goes against our values, goes against our interests, goes against our boundaries. And that's why I think you talk about is so important that when thinking about personal brand reputation, it has to first start with doing that deeper inner work. And like, I think so many people just are like, well, what kind of should on themselves? How should I be perceived? What
Mhm.
will get me successful? What should get me the promotion? What do other people do that seem to be good? How do I do that? versus starting with who am I? What do I truly require? What do I need? What do I want? What do I value? And how do I want to be perceived? And like starting with the you, and then how does that project outwards? But tell me where I'm wrong, or build on that.
You're like right on point. And I sometimes like think about it in like circles. Like your core needs to be you. Like your story, what you accept, what you don't accept. Like so this idea of, let's make sure you define yourself and let's be bold about it. Like I think the exercise that a lot of my clients have the hardest part in is me saying, what do you hate? Like, what do you hate about your industry? What is something you dislike? You would rather people like not follow? And they're just like, oh, I don't want to. I don't know. Like everyone's got their own way of doing things. It's like, yeah, but you're allowed to say, I prefer not to do that. That's not for me. And like, this is why. And I think there's a sense of like, you really have to be able to discern, like a discernment. And I think that's even something as people, I'm bringing up AI because it's people are talking about AI so much with branding and like how you're going to be able
Sure.
to turn out content, all of the things.
Yes.
At the end of the day, AI is going to be able to do a lot. It's going to take a lot off of our plate that feels like, the work that is repeatable. Like, okay, I need to edit this thing. I need to do this. I need my words to do these things. But at the end of the day, if you don't inject your agency, your voice, or even just like your discernment, you're going to sound like everybody else. Like you're going to have that. So this idea of like, starting with you want to really know who you are because I think part of all of this is that we gotta be proud of ourselves, which is pretty hard for most of us. We gotta be like, "Oh, I am brilliant." Like, "Oh, I am
Mm,
pretty good at what I do." It's so much easier to just be like, "Well, kind of how can other people use me as a tool? Like, how can I show up for other people?" That's easier for most of us than saying, "What do I want?" or how like, "What is it that I want people to know about me?" So, usually when somebody comes and talks to me about branding, they go straight into, like, their ideal client or their niche. That'll be something they're like, "Oh, who do I help?" And that's also like, again, I wanna bring it back to the corporate setting, like, how do I wanna feel indispensable to a team? I'm telling you, like, that's secondary. It's
yeah.
has to be like, how do I want people to recognize and know me? Like, either from the first meeting or in general, if they're gonna spend a lot of time with me, like, how do I want them to feel in my presence? And then after that, your skill, then after that, all of the experience and all of the things come because I think that's the best example of this is like, when somebody stands out just by how they answer, like, "So tell me a little bit about yourself." So when somebody is asked that question and the response is, "Here's all the ways in which I do my job well,"
Yep.
10 people are gonna say that same thing because 'cause they're reading off their resume. It doesn't mean you don't say that you're skilled, but it's like, why do you do it? What do you love about it? What made you decide this career? What made you decide this particular motive? Because that's gonna, be different from what the next person says. So it's the ability to say, "Okay, this is my flavor of that skill, and if I don't know what my flavor is, it's never gonna look a little different."
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of what we think about in coaching a lot, which is like the finding the balance between the being and the doing. And I
Mhm,
just see this come up all the time in the world that like we in society values the doing so much over the being. So
mhm.
naturally, and like we think that that's more important. And so naturally when we're trying to think about where value comes from, it's from what can I do? What can I achieve? What can I add? Instead, it's like, no, it has to first be rooted in the being. And from the being, the doing can come.
Exactly, and
Mm.
this comes up too with like like just I just want you to think of like a couple of brands. If they come in and say like this is everything I can do for you, it's always going to sound similar to the next. Like I think like me and my husband are having the debate of because he used to be a Galaxy phone person and I
Okay.
transitioned him into being an Apple person because I'm
Okay.
an Apple person.
Sure, sure, sure.
And he wants to argue with me about the Galaxy phone takes better photos and that does this and does all these things. And I'm just going like, well, like Apple's got a better brand. You have
Mhm.
to admit that you wanna be with them. You feel more creative when you have it. Like, that feels like a utility. This feels like something that has a community around it, it
Right.
encourages you to be more creative, even if the tools could be a little better. And by all means, like using brand as example, like Apple's brand might be wearing off. They need the skills to come back. But they're still a big player in the game because that brand worked for so long. So in my opinion, using just Apple as a good example is being or the brand can actually outweigh more often than not the quality, at least at first. Like you want to still be
Mm,
able to back up what you're saying, but this comes out with any of my clients who are new entrepreneurs. They want the product. They want they want to like be so proving energy about all of their skills and what they're doing. And then I go, okay, so tell me your trials and your trial and error to get here. And they're like, I don't want people to know that. Like, let me just tell them about how good I am now. I don't need to, don't need them to know what got me here. And I'm like, well, we all want it. We would rather know what got you there. I don't care about what's in it until I feel like you get me, until I feel like I would like to be in your world. And I
totally.
think that's when we're talking about the being and the doing, like the doing is there, but I don't care about what you're doing until I know who you are as a human being.
Well, that builds the trust and the likability and want to like and know and trust you and feeling connected to you versus just caring about the outcome. And I think we're in a world that is so focused on outcome, but we're
Uh,
so hungry for that like connection and trust. And that is truly what is actually driving us, but yet we still think it's like the opposite. And it makes me think also about like leaders. Like, a leader walks into a room like, and I'm not saying the most senior person. I mean, we're all leaders, right? Like, but someone who walks into a room that kind of commands that room or is so memorable or drives like an incredible impact, like, right away. They're not often the ones with like all the answers or the perfect things to say. Like, I remember working with leaders who just joined a team and they don't know what the heck is going on and they don't know what the answer is or anything about the situation, but they're able to, like, within, like, that first meeting, within the first few minutes, build a type of connection and rapport and, like, be so deliberate and intentional with the brand that they are, like, sharing and putting out in the world just by how they're showing up. That's like,
uh,
"Oh, wow, yep, you. I remember you. I like you. I trust you already." And it's just by how they're showing up into a room from day one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think that I feel like that should be the goal of most leaders. It's kind of interesting thinking about it is that I in the past would be like the leaders are the best executors, and honestly, no, they're not. Like
They're not.
they're the vision keepers, and I would prefer, in some ways, I would prefer leaders know how tough it is to execute because there is a sense of like if they don't understand what they're asking of people, then they probably shouldn't be in that role. But there's a part of this is that you know, I don't want a pedestal leader. Most of us don't. We've already seen it. We know people who puff their chest and grandstand and act like they've walked into success and like it just is something that comes to them and we're just like, yeah, right. Like, yeah, right. Like that I don't trust a word that's coming out of your mouth because that's not the human experience. That's not what it is. And I thankfully I think it's more like common or more popular now that when somebody doesn't know something, instead of saying like, "Oh yeah, I know about let me go look at my notes," instead of saying, I don't know. I don't know right now. I know somebody would ask, but what do you know about it so far? What are your concerns? Like that ability to go like, I don't have to be an expert in all things. A motivating leader is someone that has a goal and goes, how can I collect all of the people in here to one, be almost as passionate as I am in reaching that goal
Mhm.
and being able to let their expertise and their things come through because the moment that you try to micromanage or be the reason that you reach the goal that team is going to hate that project, but also what does that do for you? You're just going to be spent and people are going to hate you at the end of the day. Let's be real.
You're not connecting, you're just managing. And what I heard in something that you said too was like, I love this idea of like not being a pedestal leader. And
Mhm,
what I sense is like getting off the pedestal requires a different level of vulnerability or humanness. Like you said, that's not the human experience.
mhm.
So, how do you encourage folks to like get off that pedestal, that like perception of perfection, and like step into their humanity or vulnerability? Um, and how does that relate, if it does? Because I keep wanting to bring this up, like this idea of like of authenticity.
Mhm.
Because I feel like that's also like a big buzzword around like personal brand and perception and all of that.
Totally. I think it's playing to, like, people are smarter than you think. Like, we have a radar of, like, what's real and what's not. So, because authenticity has been used, sometimes I'll use the word genuine. Like, when someone feels like they're making a genuine connection, it's usually because you believe their words, they have a story that you can relate to in some way. And, I don't like to, like, focus on the negative, but I do like to focus on the challenge and the struggle that got me there. Like, so the idea of, yeah, like, part of not being on the pedestal is being able to say, "I've been where you are," or "I decided that I was gonna be this type of person because I struggled with these things," or "I didn't like this side of myself and I worked through it." So I think, you know, part of it is being able to say, like, your failures sometimes are better lessons than your successes, and letting that be a part of the conversation on a regular basis, honestly, because you know, we are always presented with, like, the highlight reel for most people. We always, even too, it feels like an armor of sorts when we meet somebody and we say,
Yeah.
"Yeah, life has just been wonderful lately." And instead of saying, "No, I'm actually having a little bit of difficulty with this thing, and this is what I'm trying." Like, it creates an openness that somebody's not, they don't want any advice, or, oh, like, they think they're better than me. It's a, "Oh, okay, vulnerability gives an opening for connection." At the end of the day, like, we can talk about how hard it is to be vulnerable sometimes, but at the end of the day, like, if you aren't vulnerable, people kinda don't know where to connect with you, because it's like, well,
Yeah.
like, their armor's on, so I don't feel like I can connect, versus being able to say, like, "This is what I'm working on right now," allow someone to feel like, "Oh, yeah, I'm working on this too." It's like we're trying to always grow. That's an easy invitation.
Yep. I think that's really, really beautifully said. And to build on that, like something I talk about a lot is that you said vulnerability creates an opening for connection, which is so, so true. Also, vulnerability through that connection invites vulnerability. So if you are always trying to create this like stoic, perfect, never show a struggle, then you're setting an example for your team or those around you that it's not safe to show struggle or
Mhm.
to get vulnerable themselves. So it's an invitation for connection, but it's also an invitation and like an opening to be like, I'm showing my humanness. I'm sharing what's going on with me. It's also safe for you to share if you want, right? So it's like
Yeah.
creating a different standard. I think it's also important to acknowledge like really that like vulnerability too is something what it means to be vulnerable is also extremely personal and is like something that can fit within your value set or your brand too because I think often people think to get vulnerable I have to like share all these personal details. I have to cry in front of people. I have to, you know, show this wide range of all these emotions. It's like no, because for some people to like tell their whole deep darkest secrets actually isn't vulnerable for them. And that's like very easy for them, but it just like, seems vulnerable. And then
Right.
for other people, that's extremely vulnerable. So the vulnerability is about like letting people in to your humanity, into your experience. And that can be as detailed or not. Like I remember Brene Brown sharing a story of example of this. Obviously, she's like the vulnerability expert. Like you don't have to, let's say there's something going on, like a personal issue with the team or emergency. You don't have to tell the team the emergency that's going on, but where the vulnerability comes in is to say, "Hey guys, I just want to be open that there's something going on in my family right now that's really difficult. And so what this means is I might not respond as quickly. I'm going to have to work from home a couple days, take this day off. I might have to log off a little bit earlier. So what would be really great is if you need me, if it's urgent, can you text me? If not, just understand, give me the grace to respond, right? And that is actually quite vulnerable. It's saying here, I'm letting you know what's going on with me, but I'm also sharing like what sets me up for success and like how you guys can like understand what this means for how I'm
Mhm.
showing up for you. And I just share that because I think people think vulnerability means emotion and like a one set rule, but actually you get to define what that means for you.
Totally, and it's funny how much when somebody says vulnerability, the first thought is, like, crying, right? Like,
Yeah.
means crying, right? In front of everybody, or and that's in the spectrum of maybe being vulnerable, but there's a sense of just being able to say, like, yeah, I'm tender today, like, in some ways, like, I need a little bit of extra time today. I don't you never need to get into the specifics, honestly, you never do, but I think there's a sense of, like, for somebody who's listening going like, "Well, where do I go? What's my vulnerable?" And I don't wanna, like I don't want you to perceive vulnerability as, like, being on a reality show and they're following you into the bathroom. Like, I don't you're not sharing every aspect of your life. You're not, like, being put on display. It's the ability to go, like, if I want more people to connect to me, where might I be putting up a brick wall? If I want people to even give me a little bit of slack, like, allow me to relax a little bit. Maybe it's saying, like, I have too much on my plate. That's vulnerable. I have too much on my plate, so no, I can't take that extra workload. Or no, I can't hit that deadline. Which one of these things do you want me to take off? Or is this actually important? Like, I remember the first time I even ever said that to, like, clients, or like even working in corporate, it was like when somebody would walk up to me and be like, need this, like, this afternoon. And I go, all right, would you like to hear everything I must get done today? And you're going to tell me which one is, like, the most important, but, it was very vulnerable to tell someone no, and
Mm. Yes.
that might be your, stretch right now for vulnerability, but just continue to think of, like,
Great point.
how do I want people to connect with me, and how can I would allow someone to I keep thinking, like, give you some slack, because the more you act like everything's perfect, like, I'm impenetrable, I'm bulletproof, whatever it might be, the more you're gonna be catching bullets, the more people are gonna keep coming at you, and this idea of, like, okay, like, nobody is supposed to hold it all.
Mhm.
Vulnerability allows someone to go like, "Okay, like, she wants this, or she needs a little bit of this, and she doesn't need me to bother her about these things." Like, so there's a way that vulnerability is not just about emotion and crying. It's about
No.
being able to say, like, "This is too much, and I need to focus on this."
It's about expressing limits and boundaries. It's also about asking for help.
Yeah, asking for help is the
It's also
biggest one.
vulnerable,
Yeah.
yeah, to, like, express the work you want to do, saying yes to something, saying no to something, all of that. So it's pushing through discomfort. It's an expression, it's a way to show up in courageous leadership, a different type of courageous leadership. It is very vulnerable. Um, wow, thanks for exploring that with me. That's a really important one, and I've never thought so much about vulnerability in relationship to personal branding and reputation, but it is extremely important, especially when it comes to leadership.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I mean, let me just declare, I would love more vulnerable leaders, period, end of like, I would if we had
I think we all.
85% of our leaders were a little bit more vulnerable, the world would be a different place, let's be real. Like,
Yep.
being able to say, "Yeah, it didn't work, and we're gonna try to fix it." Like, that's something, that simple
Yes.
thing, instead of this idea like, "Well, everything's perfect, you guys just don't agree." Let's be real, we would
Less
rather
ego, more accountability, more curiosity, all of these things, all of that takes a level of vulnerability. So, I'm just curious if folks want, like, what do you recommend? Like, people are listening to this conversation and they're like, okay, so what now? Like, how do I take control of my personal brand and reputation? What would you tell them to do first to, like, start their process of starting to own their brand fully?
So first and foremost, we're gonna get introspective. I want instead of I mean, by all means, you can ask friends how they perceive you, but let's let that be after you decide who you want to be. So there's a part of this is going back through and thinking, like, what are your proudest moments in life? Just thinking
Mm,
about what you think are your proudest moments in life, and what was it about that moment that allowed you to feel you're most proud of yourself. Those can be really good seeds to your values as they are now, and then choosing your values. So again, I gave you the personal brand builder because there are these questionnaire, like, parts that are just like a quick little, "Who am I?" And then how does this form into simple words? Like the your in other ways, I like whenever I'm helping people build content, it's like their authentic code. What's their code of how they wanna, like, be sharing? So the main thing is go through your proudest moments, figure out how those turn into values. So if you decide, or if you're a good journaler or whatever it might be, you could absolutely take all of this, throw it into ChatGPT, and, like, what are the top things you see? And those can be your way of clarifying your values. But I think that's one really strong place to start.
Okay, that's beautiful. And yeah, so the brand builder is a very generous resource that Jamie has shared that we will link to in the show notes that you can use to start building your brand or getting introspective, as Jamie said, based on her brilliance and proven method. And if folks don't want to do this alone, or if they want to work with you and do more with you, Jamie, how can they do that, especially right now?
Well, first and foremost, you can always come into my own creator community. So I have a community called the Rising Influence Community, and I do everything about branding in there. So it's something that is important for anyone who's trying to, be a thought leader on LinkedIn, to Instagram. And in general, if you're trying to start your own business, it's a really great place for you. But a lot of what we talked about today within branding, you can have a regular interaction with me and helping you to like really define your core story. So inside that room, I have what's called the storytelling challenge, and it helps you to turn these proud moments into a way to really showcase who you are. If you want to be perceived as tough, if you want to be perceived as somebody who's heavily strategic, how can you tell it in a way that people actually are going to resonate with it? That's
Yes.
inside. What I wanted to give to your audience today is that you can come to what is called the content planning sprint, which is part of our community, which is 2.5 hours of dedicated work time. You can do the personal brand builder in there. You can decide to create content, whatever it might be. And that's where you get to meet other people who are taking the driver's seat in building their own brand, but also spend a little bit of time with me and being able to either talk to me in a chat or be able to hop into a breakout room so that we can really help you decide how you would like people to feel in your presence and how you can start to share that with the world.
Yeah, that's very generous. And how often the problem is people never think that they, at least I know I'm guilty of this. Like, I don't have the time, or when am I going to do that? Like, that sounds like a great thing to do. Like, that's important. I should do that. Well, this is your chance to not just shit on yourself, but like to go and actually do it, but do it in a supported place with an expert. And what is this also like a great time, like end of the year, going into the new year, to root yourself in starting to think about how you want to be perceived, what you want your reputation to be, how to tell your story. That's something I learned the last couple of years is so vitally important.
Oh my gosh, perfect. Yeah, and I created a code for your listeners. Unfiltered, all caps. You can come to a sprint for free just for this podcast. I'll make sure all the other links are in the show notes. But the idea is, if you want to do the personal brand builder, completely free. If you want to spend 2.5 hours on a Wednesday actually following through and feeling in community with people who are doing the same, you have both of those opportunities.
Oh, that's so generous. Thanks, Jamie. And what is just like your, like, if you had to give like one parting words from a place of empowerment for folks right now who are maybe feeling very lost from themselves and like, but aspiring to feel like connected in control of their brand, like, what do you want them to remember?
I want them to remember that you actually do get to create your life. And I think a part of it is owning that you get to be, I keep saying driver's seat, but like you are the creator of your life. So let's, instead of being reactionary, let's, instead of like letting people tell us who we are, take the hard moment to decide, who do I want to be? What does she look like? How does she move through the world? And who do I want to be in that circle around me? That is essentially branding, but it's also, there's a psychology to it being manifestation. If we decide who we are and who we want to be and we act in that way and we bring people in to see us in that way, our life is going to change. It shifts a lot. There's something to being able to just, you know, turn the key, be the driver, be able to create the life we want.
That's beautiful and so true. Thank you so much for all of your like wisdom and just passion and stories, and for really exploring a topic that I think a lot of people talk about, branding, but I don't think they get under it to the root and the foundation and the idea of relating that to professionalism and like how to really think about it now, starting with yourself. So thanks for all the gems that you shared with us today so generously.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. I could talk about it for days.
I know, and I know we could, so we better stop now. But thanks for getting unfiltered today, Jamie, and I will talk to all of you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.